proposal and our proposal would be in the definition 1.2 of what a law enforcement function is. I'd like to explain what our position here is, and that is that we had drafted this definition specifically to limit the scope of the law of the line of duty function. And the reason why we wanted to limit it was to balance those factors that I was addressing at the beginning of my presentation, and that is how can we respect the differences between what you do and what a regular city employee would do, who's only entitled to the city employee line of duty benefit, in a manner that takes into account appropriately your law enforcement functions. And that is to provide you an enhanced a line of duty benefit that covers those things that only a law enforcement officer would be exposed to. For instance, if you're making an arrest, if you're chasing a suspect, those types of things. But at the same time, while you're doing the things that other city employees do, be it physical things like opening gates and closing gates, or checking the copy machine, or whatever else you do, driving to lunch, driving home, those are things that are common to all employees and not exclusive to law enforcement. And so we initially drafted that language to balance those interests. Now, you know what? Let's cover that. 4.7 on page 9, language differential pay. All this does is say that you guys you don't need permission. We as the city thinks that you should have permission to test for the language pay that the city offers and get it. In y'all's job, it's very important, and there should be no obstacle to you guys doing that.
All right, so like budget-wise, other civilian employees have to go to the department director and they'll allot a certain number of people. But we think it behooves us, if the more of you guys who are fluent in multiple languages, the better off we are. So we're just saying you can just schedule a test.
And Article 3.6, legal representation and protection for police officers. Mine's a little bit different than yours. I think that we definitely need something here because we expose you to making decisions and depriving people of their liberty for obviously legitimate law enforcement reasons. That still opens you up to suits, civil rights suits. And ordinarily, under Texas law and under the city of San Antonio's ordinances, if you're accused of doing something intentionally or with conscious disregard, then the city doesn't cover you. I mean, for Renee here, she's not covered for intentional conduct or for deliberate indifference, and that's important because those are the standards for a civil rights violation. And we're sending you guys out there to do that kind of stuff. So you need to be covered for that. And let me get back to that whole liability issue and explain a justification for our resistance to arbitration. So, we make the decisions, we give you the training, we're responsible for supervising you, we're responsible for training you, we're responsible for basically making sure that you guys are properly equipped to go out and do what it is that you do. And the city's liable for that. And I can rattle off four litigation cases I'm handling for PD right now, where amongst the claims against the city are that we fail to properly supervise, we fail to properly train, we fail to properly discipline, and that we ratified the conduct of officers by not sufficiently disciplining them. And the problem with arbitration is it takes the ultimate disciplinary decision that the city is going to be responsible for down the road out of the city's hands. In other words, it's saying an arbitrator gets to make decisions that could result in the city's liability. And we don't like that idea at all. You're accused of doing something intentionally or with conscious disregard, then the city doesn't cover you. I mean, for Renee here, she's not covered for intentional conduct or for deliberate indifference, and that's important because those are the standards for a civil rights violation, and we're sending you guys out there to do that kind of stuff. So you need to be covered for that. Look at the increases, but the point here, one of the points here is that the pay ranges are going to remain fixed, the steps are going to remain fixed, but one thing that this proposal does is that it ensures raises for step 10 officers, and we thought that was important because
were all that you would have been eligible for normally because you were at step 10, where the younger officers were getting, less tenured officers are getting 4% or 3%. You would have just been getting the across the board, which has typically been 1% lately.
Okay, so you're saying the officers with the most experience to provide to the city get the least amount of increase?
In the normal step pay plan, when the pay plan was originally devised, it was devised in conjunction with the Employee Management Committee. And kind of the thought process is you know that a job garners a certain value in the market, right? And there's a minimum value and a maximum value. And so we did those salary surveys and we said, here's the range of what every one of those jobs makes from the minimum to the max. And then we sat down with the Employee Management Committee, it was before Meet and Confer, and said, when do you think someone is contributing max value? When do you think they're fully trained and fully capable of their job? Are you fully capable and adding those value at 4 years? And they said, and this is again across the board for all city positions, they said at 10 years. At 10 years, everybody should be fully trained, they have mastered their job, and they should be worth the highest value in the market. And so the highest value is the maximum of the range. And so if you remember, prior to the pay plan, you got hired, you got the cost of living, but that max value was kind of sitting out there as this number you were never going to attain because there was no vehicle to move you through the range. So if you were hired at this 41, you get 41 plus a cost of living and then another cost of living, but there was nothing that gave you a cost of living plus moved you through the range. And so the step pay plan was devised to say, nope, at 10 years, we want you to be at that maximum of the range. And that's why everybody 10 years and over is making what is considered to be the max value in the market.
So is that where SAPD officers max out?
A little bit different because you have,
Yeah, that makes sense.
we have Bs.
The cost of living, or what do you call it?
Across the board.
The across the board increase that has been 1% per year regardless, right?
It varies. I know, I don't know what it was. Last year it was 1%. This year in the forecast, what we are proposing is 1%.
Okay.
There have been years that it was more, and there's been years that it's been nothing.
Okay. And so that would not be in addition to whatever you have in this agreement, right?
No.
In other words, the 3% would trump that, and that would no longer control,
Right.
right?
Right.
But that has control for the last few years, I guess, or that has been something that the officers have received.
Yeah, because if you saw one of those bullet points I pulled out, let's see. In the second, third, and fourth years, I'm on page 8,
Mhm.
officers will receive the same COLA and step pay plan movement. So, yeah, so whatever the city got in the second, third, and fourth year of the 2015 contract, SAPPOA got as well.
Okay. Me today, as well as I think what we talked about before, the city's position is these numbers are not going to change under the current proposal, that to the extent the police officers wanted to change those numbers, they would have to look at changing what you have proposed as the 3% increase.
Yeah,
Y'all's position.
right.
Okay. And it just seems like there's such a wide disparity between these numbers and what you see for the police, the San Antonio Police Department. You know, these guys are wearing virtually the same uniforms, have virtually the same equipment, are out there doing the job in a similar way to what the San Antonio police officers are doing, depending on who you're talking about in the San Antonio Police Department. And so I'm just, curious, why does the city think that that's reasonable to keep those numbers where they are, despite the fact that, the numbers are pretty significantly different on the San Antonio police side?
Well, I'm not sure that that's a fair question to say, why do we think that's reasonable? I mean, there's a broad array of answers to that. For instance,
Well, it's not fair. I don't mean it in an unfair way.
I know, no, but we chose to put everything we had into the pay component, and therefore the uniform component's not going to move. Do some people spend more than this on uniforms? I'm sure some do. Do some people spend less? I'm sure probably most do. I don't know that. But given that, we chose to put what we could into the pay component that went to everyone. Now, having said that, last time that we negotiated this, we made substantial movement on the uniform pay for the specific reason that it benefited
Yeah.
every single officer the same amount. It might have been a greater percentage for an officer who wasn't making as much money, but everyone got the same number of dollars in their pocket. We were able to use this to, affect a goal that both you guys and we thought was more important than doing it through the pay process.
Which, without having been at the table for PD, I don't doubt that hasn't happened there too. I don't know that the uniform allowance is probably not really tied to what's spent on uniforms. It's a way that, when you offer uniform allowance, it benefits every officer in the same, to the same degree. So if somebody's not getting an increase, somebody's not benefiting from a particular cert pay, everybody's gonna get benefit from the increase in uniform
And
allowance.
were any of you guys did you guys ever have a commissary system where,
Yeah, 20 years ago.
yeah? Because, we considered that too, so you guys wouldn't have to worry about that, but
How do you
it's just the
guys-
way that we chose to allocate the resources that we
Sorry,
had.
how do you guys do the initial uniform? Or the initial 5 uniforms?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Do they tell them to go to one of the uniform shops and just?
Yeah,
We
we're
did.
contracted to go to an artist.
Okay.
What, y'all use Blower, which uniform do y'all?
That's
Same thing?
Exactly.
The Hollywood?
By the model number.
We're required to follow the.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering if y'all actually follow, y'all do the polywool just like we did everything, okay? The nice, yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, we don't get a uniform allowance our first year. It comes already out
No,
with the uniform.
we get the initial,
Yeah, the initial five
Initial-
five uniforms
And
and
then we get a uniform plus
And then
our
it's-
uniform allowance.
and then it's 12 months before you get an allowance to start replacing it.
and it starts.
The uniform is that and down to the buttons.
I will say this though, since meet and confer took place, all the over 10-year officers who have to fall into compliance with the SAPD general manual in terms of what uniforms we're allowed to wear, were never issued those 5. Everything we had to get out of our clothing allowance to meet those standards. So the people that got hired after meet and confer were given the 5 uniforms, the gun belt, the except, you know, and then the vest every 5 years. But for those over 10 years, we never got, well, of course, because we weren't in place, but in order to meet the standard that are being enforced by the captains, is that we needed to go use our clothing allowance to get our jackets, rain gear, cold weather gear, et cetera, from that. So,
Yeah, I've been through 6 sets of patches. Because they'll change the color scheme. And then we have to go and repay to have all of the patches
Yeah.
changed to buy the patch.